This is the Relentless Podcast. My name is Christine. I'm a small business owner and student of success. I have become obsessed with talking with other entrepreneurs about their strategies, struggles, tactics, and routines. One of the key qualities that all of these individuals have in common, their ability to be relentless. Welcome back to the Relentless Podcast. I'm Christine Van Duzen, and I am joined here by a very special guest. He's one of the hardest working people that I know. He's a fitness enthusiast, an entrepreneur here at Finger Lakes One, a podcast host and producer, just all the things. Welcome to the show, Josh Durso.
Thanks. Here I am.
I was kind of trying to think of like a brief way to say what you do, but you do so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is here at Finger Lakes One.
So Vice President of Content, journalist, first and foremost. That's what I was, or I guess I am at a baseline.
Okay.
And then kind of everything else fills in the gaps and kind of became more of the majority as my career progressed.
Okay.
So like, what does the Vice President of Content do at Finger Lakes One? Basically, I'm the last line of defense editorially between what people consume on Finger Lakes One and what we get and what we publish and everything like that.
So what does a typical day look like for you? Are you just inundated with press releases and you have to kind of filter and sift through that and determine? Are you doing more investigative pieces? Like, how does that go?
So it's not as much investigative reporting. And that's more of like just a trend in the news business. There isn't as much of an appetite for that anymore as there once was.
Right.
It's more of sifting through the masses that come through, press releases, announcements, community events, and things like that. Even like actual things that we may go out and cover that aren't necessarily like investigative reporting. Sifting through all of that and trying to figure out what to prioritize.
Right.
Newsletters have become kind of like the biggest thing that we are able to do that with, as in like really hone in on the things that we want to focus on and put that out to an audience. If you read or if you check out Finger Lakes One, it changes like 3, 4, 5 times a day, the homepage itself. So it's kind of difficult unless you're one of those, and we do have a lot of those people who like are religiously checking it like 3, 4, 5 times a day, but it's easy to miss stuff.
Right.
So newsletters have become the modern way to kind of like bring everything together and make sure that, if you did only check it once a day, or maybe you don't, and that's your way of staying, up to date on what's going on around the Finger Lakes. That's kind of where like a lot of my attention and focus is.
Yeah, I get the morning edition emails, and I like that because it's like all the headlines, and I'm like, okay, do I need to know any of this for today? And then I can go back later in the day and actually read about what's going on. Well, and the news cycle is just at like the speed of light. Like it just changes so rapidly. I mean, how do you stay on top of that? It almost seems like you turn on the morning news and by the evening, there's just a completely different narrative. So how do you deal with all of that?
So my day starts at around 3:15, 3:30.
I knew that because I've gotten some texts from you in the very early morning.
Yeah, I am a morning person.
Me too.
It's like there's nothing better than the first like 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting a ton of emails.
Yep, you can just
my
plow
phone
through work.
Isn't, and I know I send those text messages knowing like most people put their phone on sleep mode or do not disturb or something. So I feel good sending those text messages. Yeah. But yeah, it's you kind of got to pick and choose, right? So the way I've always approached it is I go to sleep the night before with a plan for the next day.
Okay.
And that's the plan. Unless something literally like emergent, life-changing happens between the time when I go to sleep and when I wake up the next morning, the plan is what the plan is. Okay. And then what we'll do throughout the day is we'll kind of backfill with the things that popped up overnight or in the morning as the morning and afternoon wears on. But that way you can control it that way.
Okay.
It's not like just nonstop. Like you said, it is the news cycle is nonstop.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, there's not as much investigative journalism going on. And I feel like that's even on the national level. You don't see it like there are things like Dateline, and I'm a huge Dateline junkie. true crime. But as far as, getting a deep dive on stories, I feel like there is less of an appetite for that. And people just want like the quick sound bites. What's going on? What do I need to know? So what do you think? I mean, we've seen media shift so much in recent years. What do you think the future of media looks like?
So I'll say this. I think the best and most interesting, quote unquote, investigative reporting is happening on TikTok.
Yes.
And it sounds very strange to a
No.
lot of people, maybe not. But because there are fewer major players there, and because the grassroots has really played out, the Ohio train derailment was kind of like the moment when a lot of people, I think, realized that TikTok is different than most other social media platforms we've seen.
100%, yeah.
And you're seeing more of like what I would refer to as the kind of investigative journalism that happened in the 60s and 70s on TikTok and newspapers back then.
Right. It's more grassroots.
Yeah. And it's less filtered. It's less trying to fit it into a box, which is very much what like corporate big box media does. If you're NBC, if you're ABC, if you're Gannett, if you're Gatehouse, Tribune, any of those, like the big players in corporate media, they're very much trying to fit a product into a box.
Yeah.
And give, because they've done all the market analysis, right? They know who their subscribers are.
Yeah.
So they're giving a message that's very tailored to what that audience wants to see or what they think that
it's
audience
almost like
wants to
there's
see.
a set narrative and then they seek out facts to defend that narrative rather than just putting out actual news.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I feel like that even is sometimes like kind of a cynical view of it. And I know a lot of people who work in these like organizations and have worked in these organizations all over the country. And it's more of just like what you're open to. Because like journalists are just people, right? Like they only have so much time. They only have so much brain power, like so much capacity to do. So what winds up happening is you wind up taking the stuff that's fed kind of right to you and the stuff that's right within your wheelhouse that's easy to do.
Yeah.
And even if it's quote unquote investigative, it can, like, to a lot of people feel like, well, they're just looking for the facts to fit their story. When that's maybe not totally what's happening, but that's definitely how it feels.
Yeah.
But TikTok,
and it
that's
is
gone.
a business. So, I mean, but I do agree with you. Number one, we know that there's a lot of negativity on social media in general. But what's interesting is when I'm on TikTok, sometimes you can lose time, which is a little scary. But you don't come off of that feeling this like negativity. You're not like, oh, so-and-so's dog died. Oh, this is going on. Like there's just a better feeling from it. And I don't know if it's just that people are more authentic and there's more of a mission behind it. It's not just like status updates. They're doing kind of investigative journalism. They're trying to find the dirt on this. They're trying to, put out their stuff. And so do you think that more of like short video based content is where things are heading in general?
Definitely.
Yeah.
How much can you fit into how little? I would say TikTok is successful because of the algorithm.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of political pressure, obviously, around kind of TikTok, its roots, its origin in China, and of course the impact that social media in general has on young people.
Youth, yeah.
But Instagram, Facebook, any meta product, infinitely worse for anyone's mental health
100%
than TikTok ever could be. TikTok, the reason why, like what you just said is so like spot on, is because it learns so fast, and you leave the app and you want to go back because you're not getting garbage. Like you're actually getting what you as the consumer want.
Yes, it's tailored to me. It's all like Italian grandmothers cooking and dogs in boutiques. Like it's just fun and I love it. And even when there's political stuff on there, maybe because I don't go through the comments. I know one of my staff members says, you don't read the comments on the stuff, but it just seems like there's less vitriol and it's more constructive somehow. I don't know.
It is. And I think part of it is that unfiltered nature, but it's also just like it is inherently a more nuanced product than what you get off of Instagram, which is just kind of like a superficial like glimpse very quickly into someone's life. And then, you're out and you're on to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you because you almost get a little bit uninterested in the perfection that can be portrayed, on Instagram. I think people are over it. And I think that that's, one of the most attractive things about TikTok. And I think that that's why we're seeing podcasts on the rise, particularly with the younger generation, is like they're just not interested in that. Look at my perfect life. They want to see the information in short, digestible forms, And so, I mean, do you think that that's why podcasts are so attractive to a younger demographic?
I think it's just filled the void. Like podcasting has just kind of filled the void of what television and radio accomplished 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Honestly. Short form video is kind of like the new way to consume. But, podcasting is just a replacement to terrestrial radio because, frankly, no matter what stats radio folk ever put out there, like none of them are true. Like 93% of the population is not listening to terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
No.
So it's like, it's the way I'd say people like under 50 prominently consume is either podcasts or short form video or some combination of the two.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's for now. Yes. Right. We'll probably see another change in 10 or so years, but that's just that's the way it goes.
What I love so much about podcasts, I've been a consumer of podcasts for so long, and I know this one does particularly well on YouTube, but the thing that I like and that sets podcasts apart for me is I listen on audio while I'm driving, while I'm doing like mundane work. And I just like, it's the only type of media that I can consume while I'm being productive. I can't be on TikTok and be doing work, so it's almost like it's a way to consume information and learn. I don't have formal education in business, so I listen to a lot of business podcasts. Mm-hmm. It's how I've been able to kind of cultivate and keep some of my skills going while working, if that makes sense. So that's one of the unique things about podcasts is you do have the option just to do audio. And
you can find the podcast that's the right length.
Yes.
Because I think that's kind of like a huge part of that. I don't live in Seneca Falls, so I've got a bit of a commute, and all of the podcasts that I consume range from basically like 13, 15 minutes up to about 45 minutes. Anything north of that, don't really prioritize or
it fits your commute.
Yeah. And that's kind of I think that's how a lot of people approach it. And also you've got endless options now. Like everybody has a podcast. It's a joke, but like everybody has a podcast.
Oh, so,
there's always, if you're looking for a business podcast, you can find 30 business podcasts that range in length from 15 to 30 to 45 or an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's choice. Lots of choice.
Yeah. Well, and we mentioned that, the TikTok journalists and stuff. And obviously, as someone with a journalism degree, that might be a little bit, I don't want to say offensive, because I wouldn't say offensive, but it's almost like if you're a young person and you're seeing people make these careers without getting into debt and getting this formal training, you might be looking at things differently. I mean, what are kind of your thoughts on the future of journalism? Are you going to require a degree? Is it something you can cultivate?
Fun fact, I don't have a journalism degree.
You do not. I like you more.
That is always the assumption. I went to community college for business because I was told there's no money in journalism.
Right.
The first time I was published in any way, shape, or form, I wrote an op-ed as a sophomore in high school that was published in the Finger Lakes Times about high fructose corn syrup. And it elicited a response from an ag and markets official at the state level. And it just kind of like gave me the bug after that. And I kind of kept my foot in the pool at all times.
Okay.
But no, I actually think, I think back to the beginning of my career and listening to folks at Gannett, for example, tell me that there is a ceiling to how far I can go without a journalism degree. Mm-hmm. And now to fast forward present day, and it all just is kind of amusing. That was 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And, I don't think any of them saw the changes that were coming in the industry, but, the degree, if you go to most 4-year schools across the country and you get like a mass comm or a journalism degree, you're learning the stuff that was standard 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You're not learning anything that's actually useful.
Right.
Present day.
Yeah.
And I think that's one major thing that needs to change, not just in higher ed, but like in journalism in general, is like, we need people who can tell stories in 90 seconds on TikTok.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to effectively communicate to the next generation, the current generation, every generation, what is going on, because people have a finite amount of time.
Right.
And yeah, I actually I don't hear a lot of people in this field saying what they see, the quote unquote grassroots journalism that's happening on TikTok, as a good thing. Most of them view it as a bad thing.
Sure.
Because,
I would too if I invested in an education that,
but the thing is like, if you got one of those degrees and you are a user of any of these apps, you have all the tools you need to do it yourself, to do it as well.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like the resistance to change and the resistance to like, well, newspapers have to exist. We can't have a world that doesn't have newspaper. And it's like, okay, we can, we will sooner than later. And it's like, tell stories, reach like a new audience. It's good for you. It's good for everybody.
And the barrier to entry has just never been so low. I mean, anyone can get a microphone or a camera or a smartphone and start talking on TikTok and build a following. And, I think the only difficult piece is, we hear all this stuff about misinformation. And so when you're getting something from CNN or Fox News, any of the major news organizations, there's like an accreditation. It's validated that it's like at least somewhat credible. Whereas on TikTok, like I say, anyone can start talking. So it's more just, I think you just have to seek out people and kind of go back through the feed and make sure they're not a total psychopath. But you know what I mean?
Yes. And I would also say this, like, fake news. It's a thing every day is like, if you looked at fake news on a timeline from the mid 2000s to present day, I look at it as a bell curve.
Right.
We're like halfway down the bell curve.
Right.
The peak was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Fake news, like that whole thing, like naturally polices itself out. Like, my generation as a millennial, the generation below me, the generation below that, naturally gets better and better at interpreting, and the data backs that up. Pew's done a ton of research on this. Like, everyone is getting better at interpreting what's fake and not.
Right.
And because of that, consumption trends just get better.
Yeah.
Like, you just aren't going to have as much fake crap out there over time. Everybody just has to be patient and let us get there.
Right.
But like, we will eventually get there.
Out. Yeah. I know. On the episode that I had with our other producer, Paul, we talked a little bit about censorship. And I think that's one thing that I agree with you. I think you need all of that information out there so that it can be sifted through with better narratives, with better, you know what I mean? So that things can be openly debated, and then, the truth does come out. So I agree. I want to shift a little bit because I know that you are very passionate about health and fitness. And I always see your Instagram runs and all the things that you do, you and your beautiful wife. And, it's interesting because you've probably heard me talk on these episodes that, I've been through a weight loss journey and some of the other guests have, but you've always been a pretty thin and fit person to my knowledge. So I'm wondering, what keeps you pushing yourself so hard?
So it's interesting. I look at it as like, I never had that, it never got as bad as I guess it could have. But I turned 30 a few years ago, and I had never invested into myself ever. When I was in my early 20s and high school and all that, like, I was able to just eat whatever I wanted to, be thin and whatever.
One of those.
And slowly it just kind of got away from me in my late 20s. And I hadn't ever run. I hadn't ever done anything. My wife joined a gym right around my 30th birthday up in Rochester, Orange Theory, and took her about a year to convince me to do it. But turned 31, and like since then, it's just been like a nonstop like push of, how much more can I get out of this body? Kind of thing. And I'm a little competitive, so that's part of it. But also just like, I don't think I had an appreciation for how bad I felt and how much of an impact it had on my mental health.
It's unbelievable.
When I was quote unquote at my heaviest, which was like not that heavy in the grand scheme of things. It was just like, I didn't feel good. And given I was in the heart of like this work where like You know, I'm up at 3:30 in the morning, and then I'm going to bed around 10:30.
Yeah.
And it just kind of got to a point where I was like, I need an outlet.
Yeah.
First, it was the gym.
Yeah.
It still is going to the gym, like, 5-6 days a week, but also running has become like my pretty much number one passion in life at this point.
Yeah.
That runner's high is a very real thing.
Very real thing. Yeah.
And it's just the it's the balance.
Yeah.
And the balance is so necessary.
It is.
I don't care what you do. You need that balance. Everybody needs that balance because it's like a mental reset.
Yeah. I do it first thing in the morning because it's like, I'm like you. I'm up at 4:00 in the morning and, you know, I kind of have like 45 minutes or so to myself. I get my coffee, I do my thing. And then it's like, okay, what do I need to worry about? And like the anxiety just kicks in. And so by 6:30, I'm like, okay, I got to burn this shit off. Like I got to go outside and burn it off. And it's just, I understand what you mean where you say like, you can't fully appreciate how negatively you felt before until you do something different. And you're like, oh my God, wait, I'm 4 years older and I feel so much better, you know?
Yeah.
And there's something about intentionally putting yourself through physical struggle. I just recently started doing, I don't have a cold plunge yet, but I've been doing very, very cold showers.
Yeah.
And getting through and trying to do the breathing and everything. And it's miserable when you're doing it. But I mean, Joe Rogan talks about it. He's like, if you could buy the dopamine, the norepinephrine, all the stuff that's released in your brain, if you could get that feeling in a pill, like everyone would be on it. Yeah. But unfortunately, you have to struggle to get it. But it's just the payoffs of challenging yourself. And like you say, that competitive thing is good. And especially when you're competing against yourself and you're like, I'm going to beat my best time. I'm going to beat my, you know, I just think that when you're dealing with chaos in work and chaos in life and stress, having that outlet is just crucial.
And also having running half and full marathons kind of become like my little like fun benchmark that I like, pack into my year. And I'll say like having something out of ways to focus on beyond just the day to day.
Yep.
It helps kind of create something longer run that you're looking at instead of just focusing on like, okay, let's just get through today. Let's just get through today kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like something
which is super
look
helpful
forward to. And it keeps you disciplined too, because you're like, oh, I got to make that. Like if I don't, because I mean, you can't just go into those things. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of discipline and consistency because you can't really do that type of training just sporadically.
My goal at the end of next year is to run an ultra marathon, 100-miler out in Arizona.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just, it's all part of the like, you know, just what can you put your body through where it won't quit?
Yeah.
Your body won't quit.
Yeah.
Like it just won't.
Yeah.
And that's just the only thing that shuts off is your brain. Mm-hmm. Your brain tries to shut you off.
Yes.
And it's like, no, just stick with it and you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. The limiting beliefs is a big thing. And, you know, for a long time, I just kept saying those things to myself. I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, but everybody in my family, we're all big eaters. Like, we're just, you know, it's just what it, and it's like, and you can tell yourself and you can convince yourself of pretty much anything. And then just something switches and you're like, oh my gosh, I still have the ability to surprise myself and work hard, and just opens the door to say, what else am I capable of that I didn't believe I could do? Yeah.
And it's, you learn so much about yourself. You also learn about your friends and the people around you. It's just, it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and I mentioned in the beginning that you are an intrapreneur, so you're a little bit different than some of the other guests that we've had on here, but I would say that your schedule is equally packed, if not more so. So how do you balance work, fitness, and a social life?
I am a big block schedule kind of person.
Okay.
So like I have a long stretched out day. Mm-hmm. So it starts between 3 and 3:30 and it ends between 10 and 10:30.
Okay.
But there's lots of blocked out time. And I think that for me personally, for example, you mentioned it, working for a couple hours, going to the gym.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I approach my day. Is I will do like 2 or 3 hours, go to the gym for an hour, hour and a half, work for a few more hours.
Yeah.
go to the golf course, play 9 holes, do whatever I got to do, get outside again, maybe go for a second run, come back, do some more work. And, it's funny, like a lot of people say, like, you literally start and end your day working. Because I do. I'm working usually between like 8 and 10 o'clock at night, because just like in the morning, it's the most peaceful, quiet time I can possibly have to work. But it's like at 8 o'clock at night, I don't feel like I've been working for 13 or 14 or 15 hours straight.
It's like the pit stops at
And it's honestly, I don't own a business per se, but like, I don't know how anybody could possibly, I can't personally imagine how anybody could function with owning a business and just going non-stop. Like it just, the mental drain, the physical drain, the toll that takes, it's just, that's a lot.
The burnout is real. And unfortunately, I need to be better about scheduling time off, because I'm one of these people, just like with vacations. I'm like, we'll take a vacation this year. Let's do it. And then the year's over. So unless it's on the books, you don't do it. And I was talking to my cousin this morning, and she's like, well, when did you take a day off? And I'm like, it's like, it was 5 weeks ago. And you're just like, holy shit. No wonder I'm frazzled. No wonder I'm losing my mind, but I do too. I'll take like little pockets of time. My nephew was here this weekend and we went to an arcade. So there's a balance, but I do need to be better. So I might try your trick of actually scheduling it.
To that end, like, how often when you do take a vacation or time off, are you taking work with you?
Every time.
Right? And that's kind of like, I think that's how a lot of us are wired.
Yeah.
And that's not normal to a lot of people. No. But honestly, that can work.
Yeah.
It can work if you are smart about how you're prioritizing things and you're able to compartmentalize to a certain degree, like the mental side of balancing all of that.
Yes, I know. I need to get better about it, but one day at a time. Yeah. Well, I want to acknowledge you. Earlier this year, I think it was in January, I came here and I told you, I said, Josh, I know you've got like the in on podcasting and I have this idea. Can you tell me like, where do I get a microphone? What do I do? And you're like, oh, we'll do it for you. Yeah. You were just so nonchalant, but you've been incredible. You helped me kind of hone in on a better name, and you've been very supportive and encouraging in helping me kind of find my thing. And you haven't given me any restrictions, and I'm not much of a rule follower, so I appreciate that. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your help in doing this, and so I just want to acknowledge you for that. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Also, working with you, I've done a lot of these kind of like spin-off podcasts where the Finger Lakes one will kind of be the conduit, but it's largely on the host or the creator to get it done.
Yeah.
The work that I've done is very minor compared to the work that you have to do as the host, as the driver behind it. And you've taken all of the advice. You've clearly done your research, and you're learning very quickly. So just kudos to you for being able to stand up and deliver week in and week out, because it's impressive.
Thank you. It still feels very strange, and I wish I had someone that I could do all the booking for me, because that's where I'm still lacking a little bit, but we'll get there. But so I have some rapid fire questions here for you to answer in like one sentence, as brief as possible. You ready?
Got it.
Okay. What is your greatest strength?
Oh, man. I'm logical almost to a fault. Pragmatic, super pragmatic.
I can appreciate that. What's your biggest weakness?
I'm super pragmatic, logical, almost to a fault. They're the same thing. They're the same
as I am pragmatic.
They're the same. Not having that emotion to be able to like insert into something. That's a challenge.
Okay. What does success look like to you?
Success is a happy life. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay. What is the best place that you have traveled?
Ooh, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. It's my favorite place on earth.
Really? Okay. You may have already answered this, but what is something on your calendar that you are looking forward to most?
Ooh, full marathon, wine glass marathon down in Corning, October 1st, my wife's birthday.
Oh, how nice. Yeah. And does she run with you, or is she?
Yeah, we're going to celebrate her birthday by running 26 miles.
I love it. Really then go out and have a cocktail. What podcast show, YouTube channel, what's your favorite content to consume right now?
The Journal. It's a podcast by the Wall Street Journal, and it has always been my favorite daily podcast.
Okay.
Episodes are around 13 to 20 minutes long. They do an in-depth story every day, but it's usually at the intersection of like business, money, politics. Super interesting.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, where can we follow you? I'm sure some listeners, I mean, I know that
God.
they can follow Finger Lakes One, but you personally, where do you post most?
Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram and Twitter. I'm starting to get a little more active on TikTok.
Okay.
That's kind of like the next step, but
Yeah.
just Josh Durso is the easy way to find me. I used to be FLX Josh, and then all of these FLX insert your name started to pop up.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't do this.
Josh Durso's more unique. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. And guys, if you liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to follow us on all the socials: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.